Knowledge is limited. The power of hindsight is an incredible tool. I wish we all had it. We don't.
Did investigators miss a chance to catch Bruce McArthur back in 2013? The police chief on the defensive tonight over renewed questions about the serial killer's case. When police interviewed him in 2013 about 3 missing men from Toronto's gay village, Bruce McArthur was considered a witness. Investigators soon honed in on the fact that McArthur had ties to all 3 men. But as we're now learning from newly unsealed court documents, it's unclear if a criminal record check was conducted on McArthur. Farah Morelli joins us live now from Toronto Police Headquarters. And Farah, tell us what police would have learned if they had in fact done a background check.
Well, Dwight, they would have found a criminal record. That's because in 2001, we know Bruce McArthur assaulted a man with a metal pipe in the Church Wellesley neighborhood. But of course, in this interview, he was being brought in as a witness and not a suspect. The question tonight is if police knew that he had links to all 3 of these men who were missing and they knew about his criminal record, why didn't investigators pursue McArthur more closely after that 2013 interview? In the lead up to Bruce McArthur's appearance in court, little, if any, information about the investigation was released to not bias the case. Now that he's pleaded guilty to 8 counts of first-degree murder, new details are slowly coming to light. Recently unsealed documents from the case show that investigators knew McArthur had ties to 3 missing men in Project Houston. This document shows that on November 11, 2013, McArthur was brought in for a video interview. They took a statement from him that confirmed he knew 2 of the men who were missing at the time, Skanda Navaratnam and Majid Kahan. But in that interview, he confirmed his email address as silverfox51@hotmail.com, an address that was scrawled on a notepad at the 3rd victim, Abdel Nasir Vazi's house. From that, police were able to confirm McArthur had links to all 3 men. What's unclear now is if investigators did a criminal record check on McArthur, who at the time had a 2001 conviction for assaulting a man in the village with a metal pipe. That record was expunged in 2014. This former Toronto police detective says, given the circumstances, it's likely that investigators would have done that check.
Generally speaking, regular witnesses routinely, you don't videotape everyone. So, but I would think that given the circumstances, in all likelihood, they would have done a check on McArthur before they did that videotaped interview. If I had been the investigator in that particular case, knowing what little circumstances I do, that I would have likely run a record check on him prior to him coming in.
McArthur would not become a person of interest in the killings until 4 years after that interview in 2017. My question is, did those investigators conduct a criminal record check either before or after this interview?
Yeah, so what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to dissect the investigation. It's going to be the sum of all parts equals a whole. I think the board has spoke to it, and I've spoke to it as well.
Today, Police Chief Mark Saunders wouldn't answer the question, except to say, we don't have the full picture. The question is whether or not investigators did their work or not, and looked to see if he had a criminal record, because that might have changed the course of the investigation, potentially.
I'm certainly not going to live in a world of ifs, but I will address your limited knowledge on the investigation, because your knowledge is limited. The investigators have a more fulsome, and so they are good at what they do. I fully support them. And as expressed, you have questions right now, and we want to answer it, and we will answer it.
Now, Dwight, we spoke to the chief as he was coming out of the Toronto Police Services Board meeting today. And one of the other things that came out of that meeting is that the board's actually asking the Attorney General to expand the scope of this independent review that's happening right now into how police handle missing persons investigations. We know that right now it doesn't include any of the Bruce McArthur files. That's because the case was still going through the court system. But now that it's wrapped up, the board seems to be supportive of the review looking into the Bruce McArthur case, and that would, of course, include the investigation we're talking about tonight, including this interview back in 2013.
And those seemed like fair questions you were putting to the chief today. Thank you for that. The man accused of killing 11-year-old Riya Rajkumar has died. Rupesh Rajkumar died in hospital last night where he was being treated for a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Rajkumar was arrested last Thursday, not long after police found the body of his daughter inside his Brampton home. Riya Rajkumar's funeral took place yesterday. Peel police say the investigation into her murder is continuing. Paramedics in the city are sounding the alarm. They say the number of available ambulances are dropping to critical levels. In the CBC Toronto exclusive story, John Lancaster takes a look at what the union is calling a system on the verge of collapse.
These screenshots taken by paramedics of an internal database tracking available ambulances show frequent short staffing is causing problems. On many days, there are only a handful of available ambulances to service the city's 2.8 million residents. At one point last January, there were none.
The system is basically on the verge of collapse if it doesn't get a mass infusion of some more paramedics.
Mike Merriman is the head of Toronto's paramedic union. The service averages about 1,000 calls for help a day, but chronic shortages of paramedics is compromising public safety, he says. The problem is getting so bad, according to paramedics, Toronto is increasingly relying on neighboring municipalities like Peel, York, and Durham to provide emergency services. This veteran frontline paramedic is speaking out about the problem. He's risking his job for doing it, so we're not identifying him.
More often than not, it's their resources being sucked into our city because we are not adequately staffed to deal with the call volume.
This, as Mayor Tory urges many city departments to freeze budgets. Paramedics haven't increased staffing levels since 2016, despite almost 20,000 more calls for service last year. Response times have increased since 2016.
At this point in time, it's not even the low priority calls. We're talking the chest pains, the strokes, the shortness of breath. These people are still waiting for an ambulance when our resources are tied up. Ultimately, we're not going to be getting to calls for people's families and their loved ones in a proper time, and I think ultimately people will be dying.
The problem is also leading to a five-fold increase in the number of paramedics off on operational leave due to stress, burnout, and injuries. The mayor's office and paramedic services both insist help is on the way, but that may not come until the 2020 budget. John Lancaster, CBC News, Toronto.
Remember, if you have a story you would like us to look into, send us an email, torontotips@cbc.ca. It's been exactly 6 months since an electrical fire tore through a St. Jamestown high-rise. 1,500 residents are still waiting to return to their units at 650 Parliament with no word on when that could be. Kelda Lewin joins us now from outside the high-rise. And Kelda, the property management says there's still a lot more work to be done.
That's right, Dwight. A fence, as you can see, still surrounds the entire building. There are wires and cables running down the sides. Wellesley Parliament Square is the management company in charge of 650 Parliament. Now, the spokesperson told me today there are still many repairs to be made until it's safe for tenants to move back in. Now, while those tenants wait, the city is also taking action, making sure that what happened here doesn't happen elsewhere.
Small living room, little desk area. And then
after staying in hotels for 4 months, Mark Slipinski finally moved into this downtown apartment in December. Temporary accommodations provided by the management of 650 Parliament.
it still doesn't replace being at home, so it's been a frustrating experience for everybody.
At the same time, he says,
but, the sense of urgency has kind of died down.
Last August, 1,500 tenants were suddenly displaced when an electrical fire in the basement of 650 Parliament caused extensive damage. The city says all tenants have now found a place to stay.
Some of those accommodations are condominiums, apartments within the vicinity. Others have made arrangements to stay with family and friends.
Slipinski says all are wondering when they can return, but management said today,
I'm reluctant to provide tenants with a date until I have greater certainty.
After the fire and a flood at 260 Wellesley that left residents without power for 3 days, Slipinski is concerned for his neighbors.
I think my biggest frustration now is what's happening with the other buildings and, whether or not, another disaster is on the horizon for those people.
That's actually what the city is hoping to prevent. Inspectors have been inside 240 Wellesley since early this morning conducting an electrical safety review. Tenants will be without heat, water, and electricity for up to 48 hours. But many tell me that's a price they're willing to pay to ensure that they're safe.
I think it's necessary for this building also because they are all of same age.
I'm pretty happy about it. I heard about the fire in the building across the street and I was quite worried.
Inspections were made at the neighboring 280 Wellesley 2 weeks ago. Inspectors uncovered a fault in one of the heat risers. This time around, they said they will be doing an even more thorough inspection.
We're going in unit by unit with an electrical contractor to make sure that there are no fire issues, fire risks, electrical violations in suite.
These inspections are all part of a safety blitz of large apartment buildings announced by Mayor John Tory just earlier this month. These inspections were prompted by the fire at 650 Parliament, as well as the flooding at 260 Wellesley. Both these apartments are over 50 years old and are owned by the same company. Dwight?
Thank you, Kelda. We just had Kelda standing out there in St. Jamestown, call it. A bit of a warm-up out there. Today I was actually walking around without the jacket outside. Shh, don't tell anybody.
Oh, don't tell your wife, probably. She wouldn't have that, right? Yeah, a little bit mild out there, and we're going to see that over the next couple of days, where we've got temperatures just a few degrees, not a lot, a few degrees above seasonal, and then things get a little bit curious with the temperatures as we go into the weekend, and I'm going to illustrate for you what I mean by that. So just looking at tonight, -6, normally we'd be at about -9, so no big deal, a little on the mild side through the overnight. Tomorrow in the afternoon, we're headed up to about 1, maybe even spiking towards 2 degrees. But then here we go into the weekend, Saturday 10 p.m. So late in the day Saturday, kind of up around 2 degrees. And then watch what happens Saturday night into Sunday as a system is going to be moving through with some very strong winds. Sunday morning, spiking up to around 8 degrees here, close to the lakeshore especially. We'll be seeing that. And then by afternoon, the temperature falling to 2 degrees. That's what I mean. It's kind of curious that we see the heat coming in, at least if the timing stays the way it looks, the heat coming in through the overnight, so that Sunday morning being one of the mildest times we're going to see. The current temperature out there, why you could maybe get away without a jacket, I don't know. It's a little bit brave. 1 degree. Feels like -6 because those winds have been a little bit blustery out of the west. So that's your wind chill. We don't have anything to worry about in terms of storms. In fact, conditions quiet tonight and into tomorrow. We should see quite a bit of sunshine. In fact, so Friday looks really good and the beginning of Saturday. And then this system is going to be approaching later in the day Saturday, so that by Saturday evening we'll have some showers moving in. We're going to talk more about that a little later in the show. Overnight tonight, though, -6, and tomorrow 1 to 2 degrees. Beautiful day tomorrow. But you should have your jacket on, Dwight.
Yes, I should. Thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
You're as cold as ice. You're willing to sacrifice our love.
Their music has always been theatrical. Now Foreigner is finally hitting the stage. Coming up, I talk with 2 of the original band members about the new musical based on their songs and how Diana Ross got them into it and why they're doing it now.
There's a big surge for the band's music again now. And we figured, well, this could be the right time, and sounded exciting. So I lost my mind for a minute and said yes.
Those people you're letting down should be important.
The opioid crisis in Toronto has hit people from all backgrounds and walks of life, but one community in particular has been disproportionately affected. City Hall reporter Lauren Pelly now on the growing call for more Indigenous workers and organizations to help Indigenous drug users.
When did you start? Because you just started like a month ago, right? Yeah,
Les Harper is a regular at this East End clinic. He's a member of the team helping drug users like Lawrence Boyer.
You're somebody that's been involved with this community here for a while, right?
Both men are Indigenous. That's common for clients, but not staff.
When I'm around my people, I feel safe and like at ease. And when I'm not dealing with Native people, I kind of like on edge, kind of have my guard up.
Harper only knows a handful of other Indigenous people working in harm reduction, but he says they better understand the lives of those they help.
I've lost many relatives through overdoses, through alcoholism, through substance use. But I've also had people that have survived many hardships through that. Every Indigenous person I know that works in social work will have a relative come into their space, where a non-Indigenous person will work through their whole work life and never have a family member walk in the door.
Indigenous community members have developed a new overdose strategy with the support of Toronto Public Health. It calls for more Indigenous services provided by Indigenous people.
To the best of my knowledge, this is the first and only Indigenous overdose strategy in any city in this country.
Board of Health Chair Joe Cressy says this new approach is long overdue.
It means ensuring that on treatment, that we have adequate treatment options for those who are looking to get off drugs for the Indigenous community, but treatment options that are culturally sensitive.
That hits home for Lana Windsor Freeman.
I really had my first real drunk at 13 years old.
A way to cope with the cycle of trauma all too familiar in her community.
I'm a survivor of many things. I'm a survivor of the residential school. I'm a survivor of family violence. I'm a survivor of domestic violence.
And a survivor of addiction. 30 years ago, a fellow Indigenous woman helped her quit.
She gave me a choice. Either I choose to be with my son, and if I took one drink, she'd take him away, or I could send him to my mom, and I could drink all I want. And I chose, I drank all I want for 3 months, and then after that, I went to treatment 3 times. It took me 3 times over 6 years to get it right.
Harper hopes more Indigenous people have that experience here in Toronto.
It needs to be driven by our own community, not just the outside community, the non-Indigenous community.
The strategy is heading to the Board of Health for approval next week. Lauren Pelly, CBC News, Toronto.
Can tell you with complete assurance that my view of those conversations is that they were within the boundaries of what's lawful and appropriate. I was informing the minister.
Canada's top civil servant is fighting back against allegations of inappropriate pressure on former Attorney General Jody Wilson-Raybould. The Parliamentary Justice Committee has begun interviewing witnesses as part of their investigation into SNC-Lavalin. We'll get the latest from Ottawa next.
The weather update is brought to you by Train Extreme Conditions Testing. It's hard to stop a train, really hard. Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
The first witness appeared today at the Commons Justice Committee meeting into the SNC Lavalin affair. The hearings come after alleged political interference in a criminal prosecution case, and although it's the former Attorney General, Jody Wilson-Raybould, that the opposition MPs really want to hear from, it's the current Attorney General who was in the hot seat today. Our senior parliamentary reporter, Julie Van Duzen, is following all this whole convoluted affair from Ottawa for us, and let's just get an idea or a sense of what happened today, Julie.
Well, the Justice Committee heard from Michael Wernick, who's the top bureaucrat in the country. He's the clerk of the Privy Council, and normally, Dwight, he doesn't do interviews, and today he gave us a peek behind the curtain at some of the inner workings and conversations of this controversy involving SNC Lavalin. So he was pretty adamant in his key message, which was that there was no inappropriate pressure put on Jody Wilson-Raybould, he said, at any time. He said if she felt pressure, she could have easily spoken to the Prime Minister either at work or tracked him down through the PMO switchboard, he said, which you can reach him at any time of the day or night. He said he personally had a conversation with her a couple of months ago, and he did lay out to her the consequences of SNC Lavalin not getting what's called a deferred prosecution. In other words, having to go forward to face a criminal prosecution. And he said there would be an impact on jobs and on workers and on shareholders through lost contracts. But he said it's perfectly acceptable for him to have had such a conversation with the Attorney General. Take a listen.
I can tell you with complete assurance that my view of those conversations is that they were within the boundaries of what's lawful and appropriate. I was informing the Minister of context. She may have another view of the conversation, but that's something that the Ethics Commissioner could sort out.
So, Julie, where does this take us next then?
Well, all roads lead to, as they always do, to Jody Wilson-Raybould. So she is to appear at the committee next Tuesday. We're not 100% sure how much detail she will be able to give about the allegations that she was pressured by PMO to help SNC Lavalin avoid criminal prosecution. But the opposition is obviously anxious to hear from her, but they also want to hear from Gerald Butts, the Prime Minister's key advisor, who stepped down earlier this week and said in a letter as he was leaving that he never pressured her. The opposition says he had a meeting with Jody Wilson-Raybould at an Ottawa hotel in December, and they want to know what was said at that meeting. So take a listen.
Mr. Butts, upon resigning as the Chief of Staff to the Prime Minister, made a blanket denial. So put Mr. Butts under oath, let him come before the committee, let him show his face to the Canadian public and answer the questions that Canadians deserve to have answers on.
So, Dwight, yesterday Jody Wilson-Raybould said in the House of Commons that she wants to be able to tell, how did she describe it now? She wants to be able to speak her truth, is what she said. Now, the government is not clear whether her truth matches their truth, and it is that big unknown that has totally knocked the government off balance.
Yes, it has. Thank you, Julie.
You're welcome.
Before talking about SNC Lavalin, the clerk of the Privy Council, Michael Wernick, had a warning for all ahead of this year's coming election. Take a listen.
I worry about the rising tide of incitements to violence when people use terms like treason and traitor in open discourse. Those are the words that lead to assassination. I'm worried that somebody's going to be shot in this country this year during the political campaign. I think it's totally unacceptable that a member of the Parliament of Canada would incite people to drive trucks over people after what happened in Toronto last summer. Totally unacceptable, and I hope that you as parliamentarians are going to condemn that.
Wernick was specifically referring to comments from Conservative Senator David Tkachuk to the convoy We Roll in Ottawa yesterday. Here's what he said.
I know you've rolled all the way here, and I'm going to ask you one more thing. I want you to roll over every Liberal left in the country.
The United We Roll campaign started in Alberta as a pro-pipeline group. They drove to Parliament Hill to urge the federal government to build more pipelines, but there were concerns some people in the group held anti-immigrant and extreme right-wing views. We're live at Scotiabank Arena waiting the return of DeMar DeRozan. Tomorrow is his first game back in Toronto since being traded, and DeRozan is expected to speak any minute now. We'll take you back there for more later in the show. It's been a rough 24 hours for Nike. The company's share value slipped today, and its reputation is being scuffed up on social media. As Greg Ross tells us, it's all because of an embarrassing incident involving a rising basketball superstar.
Slipping and injured. It's a moment that will live on blooper reels for years, and Brad White of Toronto was there to see it in person. So this is the ticket.
Yes, ticket, row H, 8 rows back.
Close enough to have a clear view of Zion Williamson as his foot burst through his shoe just 33 seconds into the Duke Blue Devils game versus the University of North Carolina.
Took the air out of the arena in a millisecond. He did the splits in the middle of the court. You couldn't really tell right away that the shoe popped off, but then he was in great pain. One of his teammates went to reach to bring him up, and then you saw the shoe floating on the floor.
He says he had never seen anything like that before, but Toronto Raptors point guard Fred VanVleet says it's not as uncommon as you think.
It happens all the time. I'm not sure it happens to a player like that on that stage all the time, but I mean, it's happened to me. It's happened to most guys before. It's unfortunate. And I think he actually had a real injury after that. Maybe it was a knee or something. I didn't follow the game too closely, but just hope the kid's all right.
White says inside the arena, fans quickly turned their attention to Nike, the company that made the exploding shoe.
Everyone was joking in the crowd in the bleachers about Puma, Under Armour, whoever was going to come in and take out Nike. It was anti-Nike from the moment it happened.
Even Nike stock took a hit this morning.
No one wants an equipment malfunction to happen in the context of a live sporting event.
This marketing expert says he doesn't expect it to have a long-term impact on the brand.
Get in front of it proactively like Nike does and potentially look at ways to turn this negative into a positive story about the player and the shoe itself and rebounding.
Like in basketball.
Just like in basketball, they'll bounce back.
White has already watched the highlight a number of times, and he expects to see it many more in the coming years, and each time he'll be able to say he was there. That's going to live on forever.
Yeah, it'll live forever. It'll be fixed in time.
Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
I'm Natalie Nanowski. The CEO of Canada's largest housing provider is ousted. What does that mean for the future of Toronto community housing? I'll speak with residents after the break.
The CEO of Canada's largest housing provider is out. Kathy Milsom was fired as head of Toronto Community Housing today following an investigation into how she awarded a contract to a consulting company. As Natalie Nanowski reports, this comes after decades of trouble at the organization.
See the crumbling balconies, right?
A lot of repairs are slated for Susan Gapka's building, and she hopes that the Toronto Community Housing Corporation doesn't lose momentum now that there's a change of guard.
I've met Kathy quite frequently. I had a really good relationship with her. We've had extensive community consultations on the engagement model. We had a plan in place, and I've been doing that for over 2 years, and now I'm worried that this is going to fall off the trail.
In December, Kathy Milsom was put on administrative leave, and how she awarded a $1.3 million consulting contract was independently reviewed. Today, the board for the Toronto Community Housing Corporation fired Milsom.
The processes, procedures, and protocols that TCHC has established to ensure that we have a fair and equitable award process were not followed, and that Ms. Milsom was directly involved in that activity.
The board wouldn't explain how Milsom broke protocol. Mayor John Tory said he wasn't thrilled by yet another change in management.
Again, we have to maintain high standards when it comes to the conduct of people who are in these jobs and the way these companies are administered, and so the change is going to take place.
Milsom is the fourth CEO to be let go in a decade from an organization rife with problems, including a massive backlog of repairs, which are expected to cost $1.6 billion over 10 years. I spoke with former TCH CEO Greg Spearns. He was forced out in 2017. He says the organization is a difficult one to govern because although there are a lot of passionate people, there are a lot of competing interests as well. Kevin Marchman has served on the board for more than 3 years and will become the new CEO. He says he's well aware of the challenges facing TCHC.
The organization is bigger than any one individual, including the CEO, and the employees are making great strides.
Marchman will start his new job April 3rd. Natalie Nanowski, CBC News, Toronto.
The Hudson's Bay Company says it is closing down all of its Home Outfitters stores in Canada. There are 37 locations across the country, 6 here in the GTA. All will be closed by the end of the year. HBC didn't say how many jobs will be lost, but thanked employees in a statement calling it difficult news. The last Hydro One CEO was nicknamed the $6 million man by Premier Ford. Now, the Premier wants to make sure the next CEO makes a lot less.
Today's directive that we issued sends a clear message that we have an expectation for a reasonable base compensation or salary and remuneration for the board as well.
Energy Minister Greg Rickford says his government is ordering Hydro One to cap the compensation of its CEO and board of directors. It can do that because it still holds about half the shares of the privatized company. That means the CEO's salary is capped at $1.5 million, but Hydro One says that's half of what it needs to retain someone qualified. The province's order also caps the pay for the chair of the company's board of directors at $120,000. Keep in mind, though, the new chair of the board of EQAO, which carries out tests at Ontario schools, will earn $20,000 more than that. It's a scandal that has shaken the Catholic Church to its very core, the sexual abuse of children by clergy and past efforts to cover it up. Today, for the first time in the history of the Catholic Church, a summit was convened by the Pope on the issue. Thomas Degler has more now from Vatican City.
Upwards of 200 Catholic bishops, senior clerics, and church officials from around the world are here at the Vatican discussing behind closed doors a path forward to eradicating what Pope Francis today called the scourge of sexual abuse by men of the Catholic Church. He told them to take concrete steps, agree to some way forward to eradicate this problem. What could those solutions be? Well, we learned from organizers today that Pope Francis has floated the idea of raising the minimum age for marriage within the Catholic Church for women from 14 up to 16 years old. Apparently, he sees that as an initial solution. And many of the organizers here have talked about the Canadian model for monitoring and transparency in regards to eradicating sexual abuse within Catholic dioceses in Canada and indeed could be around the world. There's no indication that there will be a one-size-fits-all solution to this, given that every country is a little different with different levels of resources. But the Canadian representative here, Lionel Gendron, who is the president of the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops, he told me perhaps Canadian experts could travel around the world and help. Listen.
We will probably have some teams who are going to go in different countries. And probably Canada. Throughout the years, we've developed certain capacities that we will be invited to go and help other countries, really to get rid of that problem.
Before this summit even got underway, the Pope tried to tone down expectations, saying that abuse will continue. He called it a human problem, not a clerical problem. So survivors who have come to the Vatican to witness this moment are gearing up for what could be disappointment. All they want, the only thing they will accept, is zero tolerance within the Catholic Church. Thomas Dagg, CBC News at the Vatican.
Actor Jussie Smollett appeared in a Chicago courthouse today. He is accused of staging a racist and homophobic attack against himself.
This announcement today recognizes that Empire actor Jussie Smollett took advantage of the pain and anger of racism to promote his career.
Smollett, who had turned himself into police, is now out on a $100,000 bail. Yesterday, the Chicago Police Department said Smollett staged the attack. They allege he filed a false police report last month, hoping to boost his career and to get paid more money. Smollett, who rose to fame on the hit show Empire, accused two men of attacking him as he was walking home. Sulaka Nathu was at an event celebrating African-American entertainers in Los Angeles today. Here's what some Hollywood actors had to say.
This is an event celebrating black women in Hollywood, and many of the notables here, Ava DuVernay, actress Sherry Shepherd, are people who really expressed their support online when the Smollett case first came to light. And I had the chance to speak with Sherry Shepherd about how she feels now that things have transpired the way they have.
There was nothing about Jussie that said we should not have supported him. Because everything that we knew about him was he was a wonderful person, an activist. His character, his integrity was there. Now that we're finding out all of this other stuff, it's really terrible, but we cannot lose our humanity.
Others said that they were still waiting for many questions to be answered, the big one being why.
My heart goes out to Jussie. I'm praying for him and that he gets the help he needs and that he'll be able to recover from this in some way, shape, or form.
Honestly, I think what everyone wants is just the truth to come out, whatever the truth is, good, better, and different, because the reality is nobody wins.
Fox Entertainment, the studio behind Empire, which is Smollett's show, say that they're evaluating the situation and considering their options. They could trim him out of scenes, they could cut him out completely, or they could leave things the way they are for their upcoming season of the show. But it is questionable given the fact that police say his motive was to boost his career and his salary. Zuleika Nathu, CBC News, Los Angeles.
Foreigner's music is extending from concert hall to the theater. Jukebox Hero is a new musical based on the classic rock band's catalog of songs. Its official world premiere is in Toronto tonight at the Ed Mervish Theatre. That is where I met with founding members Mick Jones and Lou Gramm to talk about the project and how their music is standing the test of time. Suppose was it Diana Ross that told you guys that your music belongs in a musical? What's the story behind the Diana Ross connection?
I was in Atlanta airport heading to New York, and my flight was delayed, and they took us into a little room. We got onto the subject of theatrical musicals and stuff like that. Out of the blue, she said, "You know, you have a great song that could make a real great musical." I said, "It's just perfectly cut out for that." I said, "Wow, I didn't even know she was familiar with our albums." Obviously, I was a big fan of hers. So that put a little seed in my back of my
that
brain
seed was
there.
planted then, and it's come to fruition
And
now.
voila,
so
here we are.
why do the musical now?
It's kind of a little overdue in a way. There have been a number of musicals based on songs. There's a big surge for the band's music again now. We figured, well, this could be the right time, and sounded exciting. I lost my mind for a minute and said yes.
You're as cold as ice. You're willing to sacrifice our love.
I've thought for a long time that we have a large and strong catalog that would suit a musical to the T. You know, kind of inevitable that someone wrote a story for it and an interesting script, and here we go.
Why do you think the music still resonates? Why are these songs so timeless?
They were written really well.
That's a good answer. That's
timeless, and we put a lot of time in that. Yeah.
We didn't characterize the songs as anything that had anything to do with a fad or something that's popular and then passes.
At that time, yes. Trend, yeah.
You know, you can't try to write a timeless song, but as it turned out, they are.
I asked the guy why you so fly. He said, "Funky Cold Medina."
Your songs have been sampled by a lot of hip-hop groups.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why do you think that connection was made?
Well, I mean, I must say, a few of the early ones
You didn't like very much?
I didn't know much about.
That was a huge one.
Yeah.
And now
that was
people
one
know
of the
that's
first.
enough for a sample. Not a lot of people know that,
Yeah.
right?
That was the first one. I actually liked
That was
that
a
a lot.
huge song.
When you hear that part of the song that is taken from our songs, you know what it is immediately.
I like to welcome to the back of the minor bear.
And MOP did Cold as
MOP.
All right? Like, so there's a whole other generation listening to your music and they don't even realize that.
So they became hip in the hip-hop world.
Yes.
We have an audience now that's all ages. You know, we have 15-year-old kids singing the words to the songs.
Yeah.
And I look out and I think, what's going on here?
How do they even know
What
these
year
songs?
is this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for you, Lou, what are you hoping your fans take away from this?
Just that you know, the same songs that they heard years ago sound as good, if not better than they ever did, and that the meaning is timeless.
Appreciate your time, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Good luck with this.
Thanks very much,
I
Mike.
know that certainly your fans and people are excited to see what we're going to see from Foreign on Stage, Jukebox Hero.
We're very excited to see it too.
Colette, do you want to know what love is? You allow me to show you? That's my favorite foreigner song. I have to throw that in there.
It is, and you know, it used to be a huge favorite too. Well, it still is, I imagine, of my mom.
There you go.
She used to love that song too. So generational and so many hits, right? That must have been fun for you to sit down with them.
Gotta
Very
take
good.
Mom to the show.
Yeah, that's exactly right. All right, let's have a look at what's going on here with these temperatures. So they are a little bit, not much, a few degrees on the mild side, but it feels pretty good, at least when you get out of that wind. The winds have been just a little bit gusty through the day today, that's for sure. And some of those winds are starting to ease up a little bit, but it's certainly taking their time. Just having a little trouble here trying to get our maps to advance because I'd like to show you a few more things besides what's happening with our current temperatures. It looks like we're having a little bit of technical problem with our system. So we may, Dwight, I don't know if you're there. I may have to throw it back to you while I try and sort out what's going on here. I've got a lot to tell you, too, because we've got a system coming in on the weekend that's going to really affect us Saturday into Sunday. But we'll see if we can get this going.
All right, Colette, I got you back. We'll check back in with you a little later.
Thanks.
We have shampoo, conditioners, soaps, floor cleaners, everything also on taps.
On Tap and Out of the Landfill will take you to Toronto's first zero waste market after the break. Canada has a big problem with food waste. $31 billion worth of it ends up in the landfill every year. But as Adrian Chung shows us, some local grocery stores here hope small changes will make a bulk of a difference.
A neighborhood grocery store like any other, but a quick walk through the aisles and at the checkout, that's when you notice something's different.
We are working actively to not have any single-use plastic in the environment at all, and if there's no packaging, that's even better.
Unboxed Market is part of a growing trend of grocery stores that is getting rid of the waste. From produce to meat to dairy, all of it goes into reusable or recyclable packaging.
That's 3 produce bags, and you can use them and repeatedly. They're easily washable. You just use your jar like this, and you have a choice between 2% or homogenized milk. There's a little spigot under here, and you just push the handle up, and you have milk on top.
They're cutting out waste for household items like soap, too.
You don't need to buy this jar to fill it with soap. If you have a jar at home that had soap in it, that had mustard in it, that had whatever it is, bring it in and use it.
You won't find any boxing or packaging around here. You're using a bag that you brought, and you're really only paying for things that you need. It might be a single apple, or maybe a couple of potatoes. And the idea is that you're really just paying for the things that are inside, not what's around. According to the United Nations, 1.3 billion tons of food gets thrown out worldwide every year. CBC's Marketplace found that Canada feeds into that waste. $31 billion of food being thrown out before it spoils. That's the very thing this market doesn't want to play into.
You can purchase exactly what you need. So if you know that you're not going to go through a dozen eggs before they go bad, you can buy 4.
Shoppers are getting the message too. For them, it goes beyond just bringing their own shopping bags.
It's a lot more environmentally friendly, and it's just like a breath of fresh air, actually.
In a way, it reminds me a lot more of how I used to shop or see my parents shopping when I was a kid.
A few small buys, they hope, cuts out the waste. Adrian Chung, CBC News, Toronto.
The viewers are upset, they're complaining, they want their Colette. Have we fixed the technical difficulty?
Do you know, I went over there and I gave some of those lyrics to the computer, talked to it nicely.
Give it a little love, did you?
I want to know what love is. I want you to show me. And now it seems like it wants to work for us. So let's just take advantage of this moment that we have, all right? Just having a look at the satellite and radar imagery here, and as we advance to the next, we could show you what's going on with the outlook. So in terms of tonight and tomorrow, things are quiet with our weather conditions, and we get a lot of sunshine through the day tomorrow. It's just that what's going to happen is Saturday, we're going to see a changeover as another system will be moving in. So Friday, clouds back to the west of us, to the north of us, but we'll have the sunshine. A few pockets here and there, see some clouds at times, mostly southern Ontario is going to be a nice day, and temperatures a little bit above seasonal. But as we head into Saturday, late day, we're going to start to see, so this is in the evening, some showers moving in. Those carry on into Sunday, and it becomes very windy. So the second half of this weekend, windy and wet, and the temperatures will be changing too. But overnight tonight, they're falling to lows of -6 to -8. Tomorrow afternoon, 1 to 2 degrees with that sunshine for our Friday. It's going to put you in a good mood. It's already Friday, so that helps. And then nice weather doesn't hurt. So into Sunday, 8 degrees. That's in the morning. Then the temperature falling. So any of that rain changing over to some light snow or flurries on the backside late in the day, Sunday into Monday. Hey, I think it likes me again.
You fixed it for us. Thank you, Colette.
Doing my best.
He's back. DeMar DeRozan has returned to the Six, and he has a few things to say. What he thinks of being back in Toronto, coming up next. Tomorrow night, DeMar DeRozan will take to the court at Scotiabank Arena for the first time since he was traded. It was a messy split. Fans were heartbroken. Kyle Lowry felt betrayed. DeRozan himself said it proved there's no loyalty in sports. So how does he feel 6 months later? Here's what DeMar had to say a short while ago at Scotiabank Arena.
Time does heal everything. You know, that don't mean it's going to go back to the same way that it was. You know, I'm fine with that. I moved on. You know, I'm happy where I'm at. You know, I root every guy that I play with on that team on every single night. Still talk to most of the guys. So, you know, that's that. You know, that part ain't gonna change. But, you know, we all moved on. You know, I always try to reevaluate myself. You know, once it's all said and done, once the smoke clear, you know, since the trade to now, you know, it seemed like a whirlwind of things. You know, everything is so new. So, you know, I think once season over, once I go into the summertime and be able to look at, you know, the past year, you know, I'll be able to see what new things that I learned, what things I didn't know about myself. So, you know, I think then I have a better assessment of myself. It's a lot of things to miss about the city. You know, man, I don't miss all the construction. I'll tell you that. But a lot of things, just the how different the city is. You know, being here, you always felt like I always look at myself like, you know, I'm on the outside. I kind of be an outcast. You know, when you here, you kind of got that feeling of being in your own world. You know, and that's one thing I definitely do miss.
Bet she doesn't get to wear cool hats like that in San Antonio. A CBC team spoke to DeRozan in San Antonio as part of a CBC Gem series called Inside an Athlete's Head. You can watch the whole 8-minute piece on the CBC Gem app or our website. Welcome back, DeMar. Stay with us. We will be right back. My partner in crime here. Are you okay?
Yes.
You had some technical difficulties up there.
Yeah,
You've been trying to
everything's
fix
good.
everything, but we're back on track now.
It's always technology, right? It's all right. We know what's going on
Yes,
anyway,
we
so
do.
I can just explain to you what's happening with this forecast, which is a nice night tonight, quiet conditions, and then tomorrow we're going to see highs of 1 to 2 degrees. some sunshine out there. It's going to be a really
It looks like it's going to be a nice day tomorrow.
It's a nice Friday. Saturday, half the day's okay, and then it's into the evening hours. We'll see showers moving in, and that temperature kind of spiking overnight into Sunday. And then Sunday, really windy and wet.
But we're going up to 8 on Sunday.
In the morning, though.
Oh, and then it's just going to drop.
Yeah, one of those things.
As you said, tomorrow's Friday. That's it for us tonight. Thank you for joining us. Colin and I will see you back here tomorrow.